Spit bars, I stand behind mine. Yeah. Sentences I serve, maximize guidelines. My lawyer can't give me his advice when he's beasts that I murder carry mandatory minimums of life. Yikes. In case you didn't get the point, we spit bars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. I'm your man, AJ Throwback. Great to be here with you on another awesome Wednesday, where we are continuing our breakdown of my latest single, Jason's Lyric, featuring Michael Jalil, the A-side of my latest single. But before we go any further, if this is your first time checking out any of my material right here on YouTube, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification so whenever I go live, post a new video, premiere a new video, you'll be among the first to know. Now that we got that part out of the way, now let's go ahead and get into some of these awesome comments that we have from our Maximum Sentence faithful. Okay, so the first comment comes from my sis, Ansley Jukeboxx Joye, who tends to be one of the first ones to comment. Always appreciate her support. She says, "That's so amazing that you and your wife both had visions of your child." Wow. I tell you, it's an incredible thing that we both saw it, just in different ways. So definitely appreciate that comment. Speaking of the Mrs. comments, the microwave on Instagram, she says, "We psychic." Hey, you know, that's God's blessing over our minds, you know, unimind type of thing, you know what I'm saying? That's the throwback right there. You know, had to be in on it to understand that one, but I definitely appreciate you for commenting, baby. After that, we had a comment from Flushing Diva on Instagram who said, and now this is a funny comment. She says, "I had a dream of a dark-skinned girl with curly black hair. What I had was a light-skinned boy with straight hair." If there's any comment that might win for the funniest comment of the series, that might be it right there. Man, that is crazy. But I definitely appreciate that comment for multiple reasons. The next comment comes from her_me the queen on Instagram. She said, "Yes, I had dreams about my children and grandchildren before they got here." And you gotta love when you have not only visions of your own children, but of your children's children. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that comment. The next comment comes from simply.kimbella on Instagram. She said, "I had a dream about two of my daughters and I seen the faces." Now that's really powerful. Not only do you dream you have daughters, but you see their faces clear as day. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. And wrapping up, we had Southern Bunny 87 on TikTok who said, "I did with all three of my blessings." That's so awesome. Thank you so much for all of the ladies. It was nothing but ladies this week that commented. I appreciate all of y'all for sharing your experiences with having children. Children are a wonderful thing, and when you get those visions, it's even more incredible. So definitely appreciate each and every last person who commented, who liked, who shared, whatever it might be, or who has supported this single so far. This single being Jason's Lyric, that if you don't have it, please make sure that you go to my website to get it. BAMMLLC.net/music. Once again, BAMMLLC.net/music. Or if you're a Bandcamp person, head over to my Bandcamp page, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Once again, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. And of course, that single is backed with Rolling Blackout. So definitely check it out if you haven't done so already. All right, let's dig into these lyrics. So, picking up on the second verse this week, starting off with the beginning of the verse where I say, "You should have had a sister or a brother who very well could have made a difference and discover some necessary cures, maybe even be a poet, but I had them wearing cotton, taking trips to the Potomac. It's cold for the cold and I know it." So that part is, and this week we're going to get really real about a lot of different things. So those particular lines is actually a reference to a couple of things. So multiple reasons why I could have had children before I ended up having my son with my wife, with other women that I had dealt with or other times in the past. But the whole thing of, but I had them wearing cotton, taking trips to the Potomac. It's cold for the cold and I know it. That is a very visual line. So being honest, us as men, a lot of times, you know, we handle our business when we ain't having sex, or just because it's just a thing that a lot of times us men do. We end up masturbating. And a lot of times, you know, to clean up, could be one of those things where either you clean up with a washcloth, you clean up with a paper towel or toilet paper, whatever it might be. Just keeping it 100, you know what I'm saying? And that might throw off some people by saying that, but look, I'm the type of person, I have no problem being real about my stuff. If you don't know that about me by now, I don't know what you've been listening to. I don't know what music you've been listening to, but I don't hold nothing back. But anyway, so it's the whole thing of like, hey, you handle your business. Next thing you know, a potential kid that you could have had, you wasted that seed. And next thing you know, it's going down the toilet on the way to the Potomac River. That's a reference to the Potomac River right here in the DMV. You know what I mean? Like on his way to the waste treatment plant somewhere. Instead of impregnating somebody, instead of possibly being a child to be in this world. And it's funny because I literally just watched the episode. I don't know if y'all watch the Miss Pat show on BET Plus, but I'm a huge fan of that show. And it's interesting, and it's funny that I'm about to get into another set of bars that goes at the heart of what I'm about to reference. But the last episode of season 2, and I don't want to give too much away, but basically it's an episode about abortion. And in that episode, one of the things that the husband Terry says to Pat is basically like, you know, you out here basically killing kids. I mean, granted, they already have a bunch of kids. They have 4 kids. I want to say they have 2 together and 2 with somebody else, maybe. I'm not sure. But at any rate, Terry gets really mad because Pat is considering aborting this baby. And her whole response is to him, oh, but we don't say nothing when you masturbate. There's a whole lot of babies that could have been born off of that, but we don't say nothing to that. It's that whole thing, you know what I mean? And it's a real conversation. It's a real thing, but we don't often talk about that aspect of it. All of these potential kids that could have been weren't, because I'm not necessarily thinking in the mindset of this is wasted seed. This is a wasted opportunity for a child. I'm thinking I'm in the moment. I might be lonely, or I just need to handle my business. Let me go ahead and handle my business real quick. And you're not really thinking, you don't have the forethought, or you're not really thinking futuristically, so to say. So it's a very real line. And then code for the code is twofold, because it's like, it's code for the code as in the cold water that this is going down, but it's also how cold it is that you're not even thinking along those lines of, dang, like if I had saved my seed, that could have impregnated somebody. That could have been the very seed that could have impregnated my wife, you know, at some other point, or it could have impregnated another woman. But then that gets to the lines where I say, kind of picking it back up, it's code for the code, and I know it. But Poppa gave his soul to them rollers, and I wasn't trying to blow it. By bringing him or her into a home that wasn't focused on the bigger goal and fitting in the roles and devoting all your love. A couple of relationships that I've been in the past where I had pregnancy scares. And these were with women that, yes, at the time, you know, I loved these women. I thought I was in love with these women. But when I really think about it, they weren't the most trustworthy women out there. You know, these are women that I felt like were doing some things with other people, and they could have potentially gotten pregnant with these other people and trying to pawn these kids off his mind because, you know, I'm the perceivably nice guy. You know what I'm saying? But maybe the guys that they dealing with on the side, maybe they not so nice, and they might not be as willing to take care of a baby with somebody that they're not even really with. That's really, they kind of sort of looking at like a pop-off, you know? And so, but then in other situations that I could have gotten somebody pregnant because maybe I'm not strapping up like I should. Maybe I'm being careless about it. Maybe I'm living so much in the moment that I'm not thinking this woman could get pregnant. This woman could be carrying my baby. And then I had to deal with this woman for at least the next 18 years of our lives, like hardcore, because, you know, until they become an adult in the eyes of the law, that's what we'd be dealing with. But granted, you'd be dealing with really raising that child even beyond that, or dealing with that person being an offspring of yours beyond that. But those first 18 years could be brutal if you dealing with the wrong person. And that was the whole thing of bringing her home into a home that wasn't focused on the bigger goal of fitting in the roles and devoting all your love. Like, I could be with somebody who, yeah, they could feel some kind of way about me. They might love me. They might care about me. But it could be more of a thing whereas they just try and come up. Because like I said, they see a nice guy. They see a guy who's willing to work hard, that's willing to provide, that's willing to do A, B, C, and D for the household. But they might not necessarily be feeling me like that long term. It could be a thing where they could get bored with me, or I could get bored with them, or whatever it might be. And then next thing you know, it's contentious relationships between me and that person that I'm not even married to. You know, that's why, you know, like a lot of people will talk about kids out of wedlock and all of these different things. And I don't want to make it a religious conversation or even a social political conversation or anything along those lines. But I will say this, for my own experience, I am very glad that my one and only son came from marriage, that it didn't come from something that was out of wedlock, because I can only imagine, especially thinking about the girl that I was with right before meeting my wife, or two girlfriends before her. Like, if it were either one of them and I had to deal with them as baby mamas, that would have been hell. You know what I'm saying? So like, unfortunately, it's one of those things that God knew different, or God knew better, but some pain had to come along the way. Then we go ahead to when I say, not to mention I was frightened, between your pop and I, there'd be too much of likeness. That comes from the whole thing of really one of my biggest fears when it came to not only having a child, but getting married in the first place. Because I think about my dad, and you know, God rest his soul. My dad wasn't perfect. My dad did the best that he could do, as a lot of parents do, with the best of what they've been taught, the best of their own experiences, because none of us get it right. None of us get it right like absolutely perfect when it comes to marriage, and we darn sure don't get it all the way right when it comes to being parents. You don't have a manual really for either. Yes, there are guides, but you don't really have a hard set manual to say, okay, do this in this situation, do that in that situation. You are really learning as you go. My father just struggled a little bit more than some people did. What I really meant by that line is I always think about the fact I felt like my dad chose his addiction over his family. He chose his addiction over his kids. He chose his addiction over his marriage. He chose his addiction over a lot of different things. He couldn't even hold a job for a very long time because he was so ingrained in his addiction. And the thing is about addiction, you know, like, yes, my father had a specific type of addiction, but what I meant for myself is thinking about the whole thing of music being an addiction, media being an addiction, so many different things that, yeah, it might not be illicit substances, but everybody gets addicted to something, or everybody gives more of their attention to something, or everybody makes something their God, so to say, that they shouldn't, and they end up putting that thing or those things over their family. And that was my biggest thing. And to be honest, I went through that. Those of y'all who know me well, know that I had a platform called the Balance and Act Radio Show for a very long time, for 3 years, on WinDC Radio, and also independently, I had a couple of other shows with my homie Ramsey Brown. So one of the biggest reasons why I ended up stopping that platform was because it became a thing where I was so ingrained in that, in what it involved and what was involved in running those platforms. I kept adding more spin-offs of the bigger brand, and it made for less time with my wife. It made for less time with my son. And those are the things that I was afraid of, and I ended up doing it anyway. So yeah, I might not have been out here doing drugs or drinking alcohol or nothing like that, but at the same time, I was addicted to something that got in the way of my relationship with my family, specifically thinking about my relationship with my son. Going ahead to the next couple of lines, and for whatever reason, either speech is getting heated or cheating might interfere with leaning on me leaving. That was another thing that was going on in my relationship, unfortunately. In a lot of ways, I hate to say it, but this song was prophetic. Some good things, some not so good things. And that's why you sometimes have to be very careful about what you speak over yourself or what you speak into existence. And it wasn't something I was consciously trying to do, but it was one of those things where all of these things that I was afraid of, because I spoke the fear instead of speaking the faith, the fear came to be reality. Infidelity on my side of things. That was something, what's interesting is like kind of bringing that after the conversation about my father. Now that was something my mom always said about my dad, was that my dad, she never had to worry about that with my dad. Unfortunately, with me, that is something that affected my relationship with my wife, and ultimately it affected my relationship with my son. I've talked about it to a certain degree publicly, but not really in a video format. One time, I talked about it actually with the ladies of Destined Above Well Liked. They have a platform and I talked about it on there, but even at that time, I didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of it. And I'm not necessarily going to do it here, but at the same time, just really thinking about the lyrics themselves, these were the things that I was afraid of. And unfortunately, they ended up coming true. And also the whole thing of leaning on me leaving. Not only was it a thing because of my issues that I was dealing with, not only was it a thing whereas I was leaning on departing from my home and changing things and entertaining the thought of being with somebody else, because of how much I hurt my wife, she considered it too. And that's the thing that you never want to put your child in the position to do, to have to think about, to have to even ask a question about. And again, the things that I was afraid of, the things that I was worried about coming true, they ended up coming true because unfortunately I manifested them to be true. Instead of protecting myself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, I left myself open. And I ended up not really providing the best example for my son. I had to end up learning from my mistakes. I had to end up fixing a lot of the fears that I had and operate more in faith and understand that I don't want to repeat the mistakes of my predecessors. And I don't just mean my father, I mean other members of my family. I've seen other members of my family, both sides of my family, more so, unfortunately, my dad's side of the family. I've seen a lot of them struggle with staying in healthy relationships. And I didn't want that for my son. I do not want that for my son. And so frankly, a lot of what I've gone through for a little over a year now has been me making sure that all of those things that I was afraid of in the past, all of those things that I was afraid of becoming, I was afraid of coming true, that I didn't want the same fate that I had or my wife had. I didn't want that for my son. We did not want that for our son. That's why I get to the line of, but the home that you entered, departure is not a choice. And how can it be when love is emanating from your voice? Departure was one of those things that was on the table because of the things that were going on, and most of it coming from me. Let me tell you, all of it was coming from me, just being honest. But when we really think about it, when we really think about what brings us together, a good amount of that is our son and how awesome of a child he is and how we want better for him than what we had for ourselves. We want to give him a better example of what love should look like, what a loving relationship should look like, how it should be modeled in front of him. For myself, as my son's father, being a better example for him than what was set out for me. And for a good amount of the first 6 years of his life, I didn't necessarily give him the best example. So now It's a matter of showing a whole lot more integrity, a whole lot more honesty about things, and modeling that in front of him so he knows what integrity looks like. He knows what honesty looks like. He knows what loving a woman looks like, how you truly love a woman, how you love on a woman, how you make her feel special, how you make her feel cherished, adored, appreciated, elevated in so many different ways, so that not only does he appreciate his mother, but he appreciates every woman that he comes across, and he values each woman he comes across as somebody that he needs to respect. He needs to regard every woman that he comes across with a certain amount of dignity. I have to be the one to model that in front of him before anybody else can do it. I am the first example of love from a man to a woman that he's going to see in his life. And a huge amount of that has been me understanding that I have to do a better job of doing that. And a lot of that has to do with being committed completely, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, every possible way that I can be committed to not only my marriage, but our family unit. It starts with me, because I am the leader, I'm the head of the household. And that's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn through this process of being a father and being a husband. Because you can't take off from one to focus more attention on the other. You have to, if you are in it, you're in it. And you got to invest as much of yourself as you possibly can into this experience, in order not to cheat yourself, in order not to cheat your wife, in order not to cheat your child or your children. You have to be all in, all the way. No excuses. Doesn't matter what you've been through in your past. Doesn't matter what experience you may have had. Doesn't matter what mistakes you may have made, or what opportunities you may have had to be a father or mother. You know what I'm saying? For the mothers out there, doesn't matter what opportunities you may have had. If you have the opportunity, you have to rise to the occasion. And it's a thing where you got to rise to the occasion every single day. There are no days off from this thing. You got to stay committed. And that's one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn, but it's one of the necessary lessons that I've had to learn in the process of being a father. And I think that that's a perfect place to leave it there. And we're going to pick up next week with the third verse in our final discussion of Jason's lyric, which, if you don't have this single, you can go to the same website where you can get this gear that you see on me right now. Of course, I'm rocking the Batch Old Gold Dad hat, and I'm also rocking this BAM t-shirt. Same place you can get the music, you can get this merch, and that is BAMMLLC.net. Once again, that's BAMMLLC.net. Get the music, get the merch. You get the music, you can connect to your favorite streaming platform from our website, or you can connect to Bandcamp if you're a Bandcamp person, or you could go directly to Bandcamp, and that is ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. Once again, ajthrowback.bandcamp.com. If this is your first time watching any of my material here on YouTube, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and watching to the end, because if you're here, that means you've watched the whole thing. Definitely appreciate that. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification so whenever I go live, post a new video, premiere a new video, you'll be among the first to know. And if you're not already following me on social media, please do so. I'll definitely follow back if you are on the up and up, not on that weirdo stuff. Follow me on Facebook at AJ Throwback, on Twitter at AJ Throwback, or I should say, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and that is at a.j.throwback. And make sure that y'all come back next week, where we're going to be getting into the third verse of Jason's lyric, wrapping up our discussion. And until then, definitely appreciate everybody for all of your support, supporting the music, supporting the merch, and of course, supporting this platform, the Maximum Sentence, where there's conviction behind the bars. I'm your man, AJ Throwback, and until next week, I want y'all to enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and be safe out there. Peace.
Took a little time for you to get here, so please won't you so I can marvel at the way you grow. Thank God